I've watched the entire Scooby-Doo Mystic Corporation cartoon and it's really f***ed up. For over 50 years, Scooby-Doo has been afloat and is not even going to retire, creating more and more alternative variations of the cartoon, which makes us realize that there is a whole multiverse. The cartoon itself was released under the auspices of Warner Brothers Entertainment from the director who gave us the Smurfs, 101 Dalmatians and Junior Justice League, all seasoned with the source of Cartoon Network, on which the themed cartoon was released. A gang of 4 humans and dogs live in a crystal cave that hides many secrets and mysteries. One of them is why they still have not realized why they should not be afraid of people in masks, because every time it turns out to be people, but about everything in order. Subscribe to the channel and put a like so that the mom got $1 million. An ancient evil imprisoned in a crystal sarcophagus creates a group of 4 humans and 1 animal to free themselves from their imprisonment. The mystery hunters, however, manage to realize they're being manipulated. With the help of a jaguar heart, a spear with a heart on the tip, they set out to extinguish the evil in a sarcophagus, but it was not to be. Conquistadors sailed to the island, they captured the locals and stole the treasure. The crew began looting settlements and annihilating people. The captain realized the treasure was cursed. The cylindrical disc became a roadmap. Reaching the island, he hid the treasure deep in the caves. Later, this place would be called Crystal Cave. The captain, in order to keep the secret, will raise the ship to the mountain and hide there a part of the cylindrical disc. Why it wasn't just destroyed was most likely due to the influence of evil. Though he was able to overpower himself, he could not destroy the map. The evil in the sarcophagus could still enslave people's minds with its power. Other groups would appear in this way. In 1765, Spanish missionaries would build a town, and even later they would find a conquistador fleeing from a 2-part disc. The group quickly become interested in the find, and they are possessed by a thirst for treasure. Porto's donkey plants explosives and steals the disc, fleeing into the swamp. The monks tried to leave him behind, but all was in vain. Porto was dragged away by alligators, and 1 disc was lost at the bottom of the ocean with the explosion of the city. The monk Gabriel decided to hide the single disc in cheese, and later he and his friends disappear like all the conquistadors. And each time there were new followers in town: the Mystic Alliance, the Mystic Group and Bull Baby, the Mystic Charity Lodge, the Mystic Commonwealth of the Darrow family, and the previous Mystic Corporation. All were ruled in one way or another by the evil from the crystal sarcophagus. The Mystic Charity Lodge built a library and also devoted itself to investigating the mystery of the disappearance of the missionaries. However, as time went on, each of them began to disappear, and in the end only Abigail Glock was left. She found a new sidekick in the form of Pericles the Parrot, and set out to find a cylindrical disc at the bottom of the missionary city. She designed a base, as well as creating robots to search for the disc, but as time went on, the search dragged on and she still couldn't find it. Another group was also hit by a curse, the Darrow family. They too were solving mysteries, and one of the parts of the disc fell to them on Halloween night when they were corrupted by the treasure. Before they knew it, their mansion went under, burying them alive. One by one they began to disappear, and at the end only the youngest son of the Darrow family was left. The first mystical corporation, it consisted of Brad Chales, Judy Reeves, Cassidy Williams, Rick and Professor Pericles. They also found the disc and began to search for the treasure. They asked young Mayor Jones, who was in the history department at Darrow Institute, for help. He traveled to Crystal Cave to find the treasure, but he decided to make a deal with Pericles to find all the pieces and not take the corporation to account. Jones made it clear to the group that if they didn't leave the Crystal Cave, he would commit massacre on the loved ones. He tricked Pericles, leaving him scared, and also blamed the mystical group for the disappearance. Brad and Judy would later return to the cave with the baby, which was a stupid mistake. I never understood their legendary idea of going back to the place where you and your families were promised harakiri. Not only that, Johnson takes the baby away from them to have leverage and promises to take care of him, naming him Fred. This is roughly how the story of the real Mystic Corporation begins. The heroes are investigating a monster who kidnaps people and puts them in a green slurry. Later it turns out that he only wanted to get into the bank through the caves and steal money. But the cave was unusual, and Daphne found in it a locket belonging to Brad and Judy. That same night, they got a call from Mr. E, who warned them of the curse, and Cassidy just stood there pretending she didn't know anything. In episode 4, while the team was chasing a crab kidnapping children from the beach, they also find out that the past mystical corporation is missing, and naturally they get a scrap of newspaper showing all the members except for Cassidy. Naturally, this was the hook. that if the kids found out who she was, there would be trouble. Well, and where without love lines? After all, the cartoon is created for children, so we are thrown a rod to give Shaggy and Velma a chance for a relationship. But there is one problem. Shaggy himself is a candidate for a couch in a mental hospital. Always on edge, paranoid, overeating with his dog, so he is rather an anti-example for healthy relationships. His parents clearly don't consider him a capable child, but rather a freeloader who sits on his parents' neck. So in episode 6, he promised Scooby to watch horror movies with him at night, but he also promised Velma to go to the prom. Naturally, he couldn't choose, so he tried to sit on 2 chairs, which Scooby didn't like very much. And Velma gets jealous of the dog, a masterpiece. However, Velma herself considers herself the smartest on the team, at least that's what her mother says. Her eternal desire to explain the unexplainable drives the team forward, such her desire to fix reality, to bring it into full conformity with the picture of the world in her head, can be explained by obsessive-compulsive personality disorder in a mild form. It is with roughly the same fervor that she tries to start a relationship with Shaggy. In episode 8, Mr. E hands her a note, specifically to her, hinting that the core of the Discord is the animal on the team. Velma decides to take the next step and even has a kiss, but they are caught by Scooby, which causes a lot of drama. Scooby is just his friend, not his girlfriend, but apparently he claims something else. At the end of the episode, Velma gives him an ultimatum. Her or Scooby. Shaggy can't choose, so he just runs away. But honestly, you should always choose the wrong person to give ultimatums to. In the prison, they meet Professor Pericles, who talks about finding the keys and also demonstrates his power on the warden. This is in reference to the fact that Pericles himself likely has a small portion of the telepathy power given to him from the sarcophagus. In the same episode, we learn that the parrot has escaped from prison. Also a very interesting reference to Lovecraft, who is so much loved by the director of the series, he was literally shown in the cartoon as a teacher at the Institute, which is very cool. In the same episode, the heroes are also planted with a chest containing information about the Crystal Cave. If a past mystical corporation had it, they wouldn't have disappeared, and that one should be wary of those around them. A fat hint of what happened to the group when they decided to ask Mayor Jones for help, and what became of them afterward. On the city collapsed a huge passphrase on perfumer. If that movie where a man perfumer arranged a whole gangbang right on the street, I will not show. YouTube bans. And if in brief, a certain lady covered the city with pollen, which made everyone in the city love each other. But not everyone was affected. The animals remained untouched, and thank you for that. Professor Pericles offers to cooperate with Scooby, and he brings him the ingredients for the antidote. The heroes save the city, and the guys even praise the parrot, but this time Mr. E sends a companion who lets him listen to the tape. The parrot tricks everyone, and not only that, he also steals the Conquistador's ship's log, Darrow's mining documents, and a cylinder-shaped gem. The heroes begin to create threads of investigation and go to the site of the buried Ossabnik. There they are met by Danny, confusing the heroes with the past mystical group. He sets traps on them. However, after catching them, he apologizes and tells them about the cursed treasure. The house collapses again, but now because of the traps. Danny gives away part of the disc and hopes that at least it will bring them happiness. Well, and by standard, I can note the reference to Gollum, because Danny changed under the influence of the disc, or rather the evil in the sarcophagus. At the end of the series, they realize that they got involved in the game and that these discs are looking for someone else. Velma becomes disillusioned with people because of the mermaid situation and remembers Eugene Dynamite. In a one-on-one conversation, she reveals her friend's identity, calling her Cassidy Williams. Afro Cut comes to Ricky, telling him that the heroes have found 2 pieces of the concentric disc and that they are now in danger, mentioning Fred's real parents. Meanwhile, the group catches Measure Jones looking at ancient maps. This episode also reveals the identity of the manticore that was flying around the amusement park. It turns out to be Stinky. Why I'm talking about her is because she's an important plot character, and she wanted her father's business to thrive and the amusement park to be remembered again. Mayor Jones is plagued by nightmares, namely a ghost who wants payback. To protect his father, Fred sets traps, but the cameras show that Mayor Jones is not clean either and is hiding something. The ghost actually turns out to be Pericles, who wanted to take some of the disc away from Jones. Naturally, this was news to the team. After all, according to the Feathered Man, this part of the disc was stolen from him. Jones himself denies everything and guffaws, saying that it was just confiscated. In fact, the final point of departure of the heroes becomes the last episodes of the first season, and in fact one of the denouements of the whole series. Ricky arranges a play in which Alice May played the role of a villain, namely tried to show that harms the mystical corporation, and all this in order to lure out Pericles and steal his discs, but nothing happens as Cassidy turns the whole theater and tells all the heroes. Alice May is taken to jail, but nobody touches Ricky, although Cassidy is supposed to be taken away, questioned as a witness, and Ricky is found. Fred notices how his father is acting strangely and decides to check the mayor's office with his team, where he finds a map with a cylindrical disc on it, as well as a mold of the past disc. About this, Jones, and disguised in the costume of Frick, detains the children in the mayor's office until the police arrive. They are taken to the station, where Jones, who has deliberately played it all up, says that he will now be punished and banned from spending time with the team. Jones also hears Shaggy and Fred's abrupt conversation and goes to their house. The team learns what Frick needs and goes to set a trap, during which time Parrot decides to kill Ricky's only advisor, Ed Marchin, to suck up to his former teammate. He also catches Scooby-Doo in the caves beneath the only missionary building in town. However, they are interrupted by Frick. He rescues Fred as he was dangling over a cliff, thus giving himself away. Jones tells everything to Fred and he makes the decision to find the real parents. Their relationship, literally the whole season was shown everything was going to the wedding, but now Daphne will have to wait because Fred decided to find his parents and break off the engagement. Not only that, but Daphne is looking for someone to blame in the person of Velma, because if it wasn't for her curiosity, and so on and so forth. Very interesting irony turned out to be the authors of the cartoon. Shaggy is sent to a military academy and Scooby-Doo to a farm. After the events of the first season, Janet was put in the mayor's place and it became advantageous for her to bring back the mystical group. Scooby-Doo stole the tank only to bring Shaggy back. This says a lot about their friendship. The heroes only get together as a foursome because Daphne now wants to marry a handsome man. We also learned that Velma has been working for Ricky with Stinky all this time, but she forgot to tell the team. She tries to put Stinky on the team on purpose, but it fails and they leave her at the airfield alone when Daphne decides to rejoin the team. Oh yeah, Fred made it through the landing gear to the cockpit and was able to land the plane. Am I the only one confused by that? I think we could do a whole video about the passholes, since I can't possibly show you all of them. There's a whole episode dedicated to D&D where the guys are trying to win at a board game. At the end of the episode, Fred's real parents Brad and Judy show up. I'll explain why that's the case. 2.3. Ricky wanted Cassidy to come back to the team to get the discs from them, but she refuses. Pericles, on the contrary, decides to suck up to Ricky. He tells about the discs and offers to take them to save them from the curse at the same time. And on the other hand, for the sake of the treasure, at least this is the idea of Pericles. Well, and more precise reason you will learn later, the heroes find one of the parts in the cheese, which was hidden by the monk Gabriel. Scooby-Doo goes to an American barbecue while Velma meets Ricky. He convinces her to come back to the team, along with Stinky, but she refuses, saying he can't be trusted. Feathery, as he said above, is sucking up to Ricky, and at the end of the episode, he manages to do so when they hear a recording on the radio. Cassidy tells them to be careful and be wary of the feathered villains. Except why this was the case is unclear. It was easier to tell the children directly and not to make it public because she herself can get under attack. You can imagine what every time the ordinary citizens of the city hear when there are such confrontations between the teams. A natural mafia. The children learn about Dark Lilith, the guardian of the mountain against evil, from their classmates. If anything, Lilith knocked them against the mountain a little. In the residents of the mountain, they learn that is the keeper and protects them. However, it is much simpler than that. The team climbs up, they find the ship that went dragged here by Captain El Aguirre, who I described above. They find a hidden part on the ship, and Dark Lilith, actually Stinky, appears. She gives the disc to Velma and says she needs to hide because she's afraid Ricky will kill her. At the end, we also see the ghost of the captain, who tells you specifically that Nibiru is coming. Fred's parents try in every possible way to drum up their concern, and Fred gladly accepts it. In general, I do not understand their motivation. At first, they kind of because of Fred leaves the city, but as soon as the danger leaves, then at the call of Pericles, they roll back and even try to play good parents only to steal discs. Whether this may be because of the influence of evil on them is not exactly clear. Finally, after Darrow Mansion, they arrive at the library of Oswald Burlington. This is, if anything, a former member of the Mystic Charity Lodge. In the library, stacked logs caused Velma to see a hallucination in which a stone statue of Mr. Pitches came to life and chased her. Then Oswald and the rest of his team appeared on their train, who seemed to distract and pacify Mr. Pitchess into joining them as a living orangutan. Oswald and Velma waved to each other before the good box disappeared. All the characters encountered the galoots in one way or another. Shaggy, for example, got sucked in with Daphne, and Scooby saw the ancient Anunnaki, and for good reason. We'll get to that at the end of the clip. In the end, we learn that all this was done by Dean Feng, the caretaker of the library. He could not just close it, so he decided to scare the people, so that the city finally realized that there is no sense to keep such a big museum of books. All in all, in this series, you can't say for sure what was a hallucination and what was true. The line between the two is very thin. Cassidy throws a book out of the library and no one even thinks to go inside and find who did it. Which is as weird as it gets. You got your window broken. Literally hooliganism. But they get a book. That makes it clear who created the concentric disc and gives them a hint that they need to look deeper. While Cassidy was sitting around pushing opposition speeches against her former friends again, the kids arrive in the form of German soldiers. The kids arrive just after the total destruction. I think it was some sort of warning from Pericles. They find the ruins of the missionary city as well as holes excavated by the works. Incidentally, they show up exactly at this point and try to kill them. They save themselves by sneaking into a laboratory. There they find a factory for manufacturing the same robots as well as Glock's corpse on a chair. Pericles has been using Glock's hologram as commands for the robots all along, and it also explains why not all the robots have weapons, since they were originally just for digging. Cassidy sacrifices herself for the kids, they are rescued and decide to expose the Destroido, Ricky's company, and generally it's a good plan. After all, they destroyed the base with the robot factory, so they won't have any more pawns. Although at the end of the episode, Judy and Brad agree to help steal the discs. But again, their motivation is questionable. They watch their son get killed by robots on screen, but they don't care. Now they're concerned about their son and his safety. The kids sneak into the lab and steal encrypted data and even meet Freddy Bear, who has fallen victim to their hair lotion and become hairy. They also defuse a bomb that was deliberately planted near the lab. Pericles, on the other hand, wanted to blame it on the kids so he could put them in jail and take the discs away. Brad and Judy appear on the scene and try to lure the children out with the help of the monster Krampus, but they succeed, only to fall into Fred's trap. He admits that he originally knew the parents were playing a part, and now they are ready to play grown-up too. The heroes collect the disc and are overshadowed by the curse of the sarcophagus. The next goal was to dig up more information, and they find it when they put on a theatrical production about the monks in Porto the Donkey. When the heroes are alone with the monk's mummy, he rises from the dead and tells of a prophecy in which the dog must die. The characters also learn about the keys that symbolize one element or another. They go to the cemetery for the first key and find an antique gun belonging to the Darrow family. Back in their office at City Hall, they find Fred's parents setting the fire. Now those are parents, loving and caring from the first seconds. Are they German by any chance? Then why, under the auspices of security, do they try to blow up a helicopter with a rocket launcher? They survive, but Nova, Scooby's girlfriend, ends up in the hospital. Let's digress a bit and talk about the chic reference of the dancing plague. It's the kind of plague that made the poor European people writhing in pain and cramps, blamed of course on unsanitary conditions, condemning baths and other hygienic means of body care. And so it is here, but here it was literally shown by dance fever. Not only that, but while the whole town was dancing to zombie music, at the same time the witches were giving a concert on a yacht off the Crystal Cave Pier. Genius. They gather a crew and give a final chord that saves the whole town. Later, a group of gals help the kids figure out the disc. Due to changes in global things in the world, the concentric disc changed a bit, and the gals had to sing the melody that formed the score. It's the same letters, just notes on paper. They find a second key, which turns out to be the Seawolf's hat. Meanwhile, Scooby's girlfriend came out of her coma and started talking about Nibiru. The other keys were not hard to find, for example. The bowl was the third key and was kept by the cook who made waffles on the TV. Meanwhile, Ricky decided to show his teeth, but he didn't know that Parrot had calculated everything and had already installed a poison chip in his spine to keep his mouth shut. In his dream, Scooby finds himself in a dark box or red room based on the TV series Twin Peaks, the room itself being a kind of place where the laws of physics work differently. Here, however, it is presented more as an interworld. Anunnaki tells Scooby that the line between worlds is blurring, and every 1,000 years her kin come to Earth. Scooby's job is to destroy the most evil Anunnaki, who is imprisoned in a crystal sarcophagus. Actually, a very interesting blending of the plot with ancient Sumero-Akkadian mythology and playing up why the Scooby-Doo team is together. Now we get to Silhouette Hill, or in the series where Judy and Brad have plastic surgery to become like Fred and Daphne. Okay, Brad, he at least became handsome, and Judy just turned into an old woman. Unfortunately, the concentric disc has to be given to the parrot, which is flying at all speeds to the mechanism that will reveal the exact location of the gate in the caves. To understand how to fight the ancient Anunnaki, the guys go to the man from Scooby's dream to guide them to the interworld. There the heroes meet the beast, or rather a cursed conquistador. I have a question. Where did the rest of his wards go? Why is he only one? After all, in fact, everyone who was covered by the curse should have been here. Here, according to the foster father Jones, the best versions of those who were cursed. However, not everyone is shown here. Perhaps it's just a hole, or his underlings were originally okay with killing and pillaging. They learn of the heart of the jaguar, a spear with a stone at the tip with which to destroy evil. They find it in ancient Mayan tombs and set out to search for the treasure. What was their surprise when they saw all the inhabitants digging a quarry for the sake of finding the gate? Pericles went head over heels and literally set up a concentration camp. The team upgrades their mystical machine and come up with a plan to sneak earlier to the sarcophagus, but they only manage to keep up due to robot gunfire. However, when things get to the first gate, they have to work together due to the threat of Stinky being killed. They pass the gate with the help of a scrap of sail which symbolized the wind element. Stinky sacrifices himself and we hear the sound of the robots firing. They activate the doors with a bowl and pass through, then they have to use a hat and fill it with water. And then we see a scene exactly like the last sequel, Scooby-Doo. Where's my mummy? The final door symbolized fire and it was opened with a Kremlin on a gun. As they are about to destroy evil, it tells them that everything they have, their friendship, their relationship, was done by an ancient Anunnaki. The guys realize this but decide to destroy it anyway. Pericles snatches the spear and frees the evil. The Anunnaki is going to absorb Scooby as a vessel, but the parrot asks to switch places, because that's how he wants to get some power. That's what he thought, until the Anunnaki completely takes over the body and essentially ruins all of the foolish parrot's plans. The jaguar's heart shattered, destruction all around. Scooby-Doo realizes through visions that their heart is them. When a barrier protects them from the Anunnaki strike, they destroy the sarcophagus, giving birth to a new reality, where the sarcophagus never existed. They meet Brad and Judy, who are planning Fred and Daphne's wedding. Shaggy is a great cook, and Fred's adoptive father works as a gym teacher. That's essentially where the series ends. There are still a lot of loose ends, such as why, if Anunnaki originally planned to set up the plan so that the children would eventually destroy him. Why did Scooby-Doo start having visions of Anunnaki only after Harlan's and dreams related to the Red Room? However, it's still a great sequel after those shows of the 2070s, where every series was built on the same thing, that the villains wear masks. At first glance, any of the cartoons about Scooby-Doo seems demanding to the viewer of the animated series, the concept of which anyone will understand after the first watched series. The team arrives in another town, where something inexplicable is happening, running a mysterious monster or flying a ghost. Everyone is in a panic. In the process, the brave investigators hit the trail of the creature. A Benny Hill-style chase scene ensues, and the unidentified entity falls into a trap set up like a Goldberg machine, that is an absurdly complex mechanism with lots of ropes and blocks. It turns out to be no magical creature whatsoever, just a man in a special suit. His mask is triumphantly pulled off, and the hapless villain frustratedly exclaims something along the lines of, "I could have gotten away with it if it weren't for the annoying kids." There seems to be nothing simpler than Scooby-Doo. Such series are called procedurals. The series are arranged in approximately the same way. Everything revolves around an unchanging event structure. Formally it is a detective, however, even a fairly attentive child is not difficult to determine. Scooby-Doo from the very beginning taught the viewer a simple truth. The main monster of modern times, always a man. Do not need the intervention of higher forces, mean predetermined fate. Fate, which dooms us to torment and deprivation. Everything is in your hands. There's enough power in those hands to prevent disaster, to uncover any deception, to pull off the mask of powdered evil. Simply put, in the late 60s, children's Scooby-Doo gave a sense of solid ground under their feet. This seemingly naive series differed favorably from others, and that's why Scooby-Doo lived so long and continues to come out. for more than half a century. To me, this cartoon will always give a sense of nostalgia and freedom. I watched the entire cartoon. Scooby-Doo Mystic Corporation, and it's really f***ed up.